Aloha and welcome to Trust and Verify. I'm Trust, he's Verify. Let's get this party started. Tonight we have a great show planned for you, but you know what they say about plans, they never go right. We've already started behind the 8 ball tonight. Periscope is giving us an issue with streaming, so we said, you know what? We're just going to go live on stream.me. So we're going to ask you guys to help us out. Tweet out the link to stream.me for our show so we can get everybody informed where we're at. But before we go any further, let me introduce my friend, my partner, hashtag no homo, Boogie Bumper. Boogie, how's it going out there?
Very good, James. It's been a very exciting week. I've been juggling a couple of things. The royal wedding, that was big news for at least half a day. I was amazed to wake up this morning and find people still talking about it. Gladly, though, that's behind me, and I won't bore you rebellious scum any further with the goings-on in the royal family that you so disgracefully dismissed just a little over 200 years ago. We've like you said, we've got so much stuff to get through. I mean, it's been a hot news day. We've kind of gotten used to, haven't we, the news dropping on a Friday. And from what I remember, Friday seems like a week ago, and it was relatively quiet. It was a relatively quiet week. There was a lot of assumption and innuendo, but very little meaty stuff that we could chew on coming out. But it's all been happening over the weekend for once. So I think, and I want to go to you and see what, piques your interest during the week. But the way it's been gearing up, and don't get me for feels here, but it almost feels like we're building for something next week, something big to happen. What do you think?
I think that you're absolutely right, and I think we're definitely building to something. Let me give the folks a little heads up. We're going to talk way more about this in a little bit. Tonight we have a superstar surprise guest that's also going to be on the show with us, and we're going to tell you right now, this week and next week's preview are so much going on, there's no way we're going to be done in an hour. So, having said that, tonight we are definitely going overtime. There's no way we can cover what we've already talked about this week and then also preview the next week in that short amount of time. So, we got a special guest. We got the Stop the Hammering episode that we're going to end every episode with, no matter what, even if it's 4 o'clock in the morning. So, having said that, I'm going to kick this thing back to Boogie. We're going to start right now, dive right in and try to get through as fast as we can. So what do you got for us, Boogie?
Okay, well, first of all, the talk about the FBI informant, and, I like to dive into the left-wing sources, James, so I thought this was interesting. Officials tell CNN that FBI informant not planted inside the Trump campaign. And I thought, wow, that's pretty ballsy from CNN to drop this bombshell. Like, it's all made up. Nothing particularly happened. So I cross-referenced them with the New York Times. New York Times, quote, FBI used informant to investigate Russia ties to campaign, not to spy, as Trump claims. It's, okay. Yeah, he was only there to investigate Trump's ties to Russia, but not to investigate Donald Trump. You see, it's a wordplay thing. But these both came out within 2 days of each other, right?
Well,
and it was 2 days ago. Sorry, these both came out 2 days ago, and they can't get their story straight.
Well, I think this is standard lefty tactics, right? Cover both sides. Somebody's got to be right. If one of you says, the Titans win, and the other one says the Panthers win, one of you is right, and then you just roll into that genre. I mean, this is what they're doing. You can see, these guys don't know what's going on because we've plugged up almost every leak there possibly is in the government. So they don't have any sources, and they don't have any idea how to do investigative journalism anymore. So if someone doesn't hand deliver the story to them on a silver plate, they got no idea what to talk about. But we're clear. I mean, you could see that, the big voices, and even you, the little voices out there that think that you're not being paid attention to, you guys had this right a year ago. You guys all told everybody on the left, hey, the FBI had people that they were doing stuff anti-American Constitution. They were definitely spying on Trump. We know that we have the evidence. We know we saw the timing. We know that the biggest hero exposing all of this was Admiral Mike Rogers, the actual head of the NSA. So we're looking forward to this week. We're going to come back to that subject in a little bit, but that's about the pinnacle of what I see here is that the FBI definitely had people in there, and they definitely weren't there to help Donald Trump.
Okay. Well, let me throw this one at you then. Let's play this very short clip from Judge Giuliani yesterday, James. And I think it speaks to a growing tide of frustration within the Republican base and with even, speaking more broadly, the MAGA base, which isn't necessarily Republican, as evidenced by the flipping of the blue wall states, very much Democrat voters up there. Here's just a couple of minutes of Judge Jeanine Pirro.
But what, ladies and gentlemen, is unmistakable in all of this is that the single most dangerous person to the agenda of President Trump, the Republican Party, and ultimately to all Americans is the Attorney General of the United States himself, Jeff Sessions. The man has done nothing to make anyone responsible for the blatant corruption, the unmistakable perjury, the in-your-face obstruction of our laws that we've seen play out every day. He has fought the release of telling documents that would put an end to this horrible period in America's political history. Documents that would make clear that the criminals in this attempt to overthrow an American president. He's even argued that he doesn't want to release records of Hillary because she's now a private citizen. This man has done nothing to create confidence that wrongdoers will be accountable, answerable. He has done nothing to create confidence on the part of the American people in our system of justice. And with all the power and might of the Department of Justice behind him, he continues to do nothing. He refuses to take them out in cuffs. The most powerful prosecutor in the world, the man who holds the scales of justice in his hands, hides behind the coattails of a Rod Rosenstein, a man we've never even heard of, who is in fact behind all of Jeff Sessions' decision, who is in fact running our Department of Justice. The man who has the honor to carry the prefix United States Attorney General before his name, Jeff Sessions, is indeed the most dangerous man in America.
She doesn't miss, Jeanine, when she focuses in on a target, James. She's pretty red hot, and that was smouldering from Judge Jeanine. Now, this the other day in CNN, James, Giuliani says Mueller probe could end, a probe of Trump could end by September if president agrees to interview. I noticed Giuliani backtracking a little bit on his earlier claims that there will be no interview. I would advise him to absolutely not talk to Robert Mueller. Now, before I get your thoughts on this, to me, this indicates, rather than what it's being reported as a backflip or walking back, to me, this is a confidence move. Because if you're now saying, hey, you know what? Maybe we can sit down and talk with Robert Mueller now. Maybe they know more. Maybe they're more confident of their own case, and therefore they're not afraid of an interview coming back at them as well. That's the other thing that I grabbed out of that. But for Judge Jeanine, who was a supporter of Jeff Sessions from the beginning, and she carries a lot of weight with Republican voters as well. Do you think the clock is running out on Jeff Sessions, even if he's doing the right thing? Even if he's doing the right thing, is it getting to a point now where things have to start happening for his own sake or Donald Trump's sake more broadly?
I think we're right at the part of the game we told you that we were at weeks ago. This is what we've been telling you. Last year was all about setting up the chessboard. This year is all about the execution of the chessboard. And, I think we should dive into this with our guests here in a little bit. So I'm going to be just a little bit of brief here on this portion of the subject and say that Donald Trump clearly sent the signal today that starting tomorrow, it's game on. And so now we're at that point with Jeff Sessions that either A, I'm going to be proven that I was right and many of my co-hosts were right, that this has all been a strategy, or B, I'm going to be proven that I was wrong and that Jeff Sessions is going to get fired. Either way, we're likely to have an answer to that question within the next couple of weeks. But I definitely want to get into this subject with our guests. So you want to tell us who we got for us?
Sure, we'll bring him in. Our very special guest is a guy who's a little bit more unpopular than me. He's definitely whiter you'll be pleased to know. So we've covered all strains of the diversity spectrum. Tom Shadley, how are you going? Thanks for joining us.
Hello. I'm super stoked to be here. Thanks for having me on, you guys. I'm super pumped. And I'm going to try to bring my best self to this broadcast. They're really actually topics that are really interesting to me, and I may have a little bit of insight too. So I'm stoked.
Okay, well, just on the current, like on the opening, what do you make of, like, you focus more on the writing side of things. You've worked for various content pools, so to speak, and various personalities in online media. Who's winning the optics battle here? Would you say it's the people beating the drums for impeachment, or is it flipping back on itself? Is it boomeranging?
I think it's really hard to tell in the short term. And one thing, and I'm not trying to demean anybody on any side of the political spectrum here, it's just a fact that's kind of uniform in human psychology, is that the American attention span especially is very short. And this can be a good thing and it can be a bad thing when you're trying to control a narrative. So for instance, with the Sessions, the Sessions debate, I've seen this debate cause quite a riff among the right, because everyone was very excited for Jeff Sessions when he initially got in. A lot of support, like you said. Judge Janine was a huge supporter of Jeff Sessions, and now there's a lot of people that are very disappointed in kind of what they perceive is his contribution. I've talked to two members of the Trump transition team personally about this issue specifically, and both of them said, in unrelated conversations, both of them said literally almost the exact same thing, is that, and so these are people who know Jeff Sessions, that he is doing work. And I had my doubts at first as well, because we all want immediate results. In this 8-hour, 10-hour, 12-hour media cycle, everyone's gotten so used to just having immediate gratification with knowledge and immediate gratification with political, everyone wants to lock her up today, not tomorrow, but today. And I've talked.
If I can push back on that just a little bit, though, Tom, someone like Judge Janine, who's made a career on the bench, she would understand the timing of this. She knows investigations take time, surely. And, I think the point is, we're a bit over a year now, and for all the so-called collusion evidence that comes out, which really there hasn't been any concrete evidence at all. There's been plenty of factual evidence come out in regards to manipulation of the Pfizer court, planted informants, mishandling of confidential documents. It was rife, right? So, is that a fair statement?
Yeah, 100%. And it's strange because I like to play devil's advocate as much as I can. And on this one, it's really hard for me. Obviously, I don't know what Sessions is doing on a personal level. I haven't talked to him. I don't know what his thoughts are, his plans are, kind of how they're doing this. But I do understand a little bit of investigations. And I can tell you that if I was an investigator and I was working with a team or something, it was my job to investigate these things. It doesn't really matter how much the evidence seems like it's just out in the open in public. To actually prosecute a case like this would be like the most difficult, most nightmarish case to potentially handle, because the things they're talking about run into the branches of government in which they would normally use to investigate. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not just we have to deal with a criminal perp here and that's where we're trying to lock it up. We're also dealing with entities that are potentially compromised. And I mean, this is normal. If this is a straight just criminal case and there was no kind of belief system of this deep state or these kind of other mitigating factors, it's a nightmare case. And then when you throw that in, it's a complete nightmare case. And I know it's been a year and a half or whatever it's been, but and it could go either way. Maybe Jeff Sessions isn't doing anything. Maybe he is. I've heard from the Trump transition team that he is, but at the same time, I mean, this case, and it's not. This is also a case you don't want to blow. So not only is it a super, super difficult case it's just multifaceted, and there's so many variables coming from everywhere that are also ever changing. I mean, could you imagine you have your whole case buttoned up? You're like, yeah, we've got it. We're going to do this, and we're going to prosecute this person. And then new evidence comes to light that maybe someone you're using inside your investigation is potentially compromised. I mean, these are the wheels and the cogs in the machine, and you have to get it right, because the worst thing that could happen in the public, for the public anyway, for optics and kind of spin PR, is they finally get everything they think they need. They go to court, they try to prosecute, and then the people that we believe should be found guilty of crimes or that are guilty of crimes walk again. And that would be absolutely devastating for the whole movement. And so it's very, very difficult. It's very touchy, but I know a lot of people are very impatient, and rightfully so, in my opinion. But it is really, I mean, that balancing act is intense. It's not a job I would ever want.
Let me jump in here too, Boogie. Is that, yes, I absolutely agree with both of what you guys have said. And that's why I point to the fact that Jeff Sessions already behind the scenes appointed John Huber to investigate, because if people don't realize how many people, to Tom's point, are actually on this case, he has over 740 investigators. 740 investigators digging into this stuff. And we're talking about, where do we have to start? This is only the beginning. People are going to have patience. Why? Because the people that were investigating the criminals were criminals themselves. So now we have to start with the FBI. We have to start with the DOJ. And exactly like a comment I just saw a few minutes ago from Doc is absolutely on point, is that once this thing gets done and we move into this week, we're going to find out very quickly which side Jeff Sessions is on. And I still am going to say that I'm right. We know he's been working. We know, for one, there's no way he's going to go against Trump. You know, I don't see that that's happening. But we're going to find out. That's for sure. The pressure is now on. And that's why you see people like Judge Janine. Why are they going after Jeff Sessions? Because she can. Because it's appropriate. Because this is what the American people have been telling everybody for a while. Even I have said, keep screaming, keep yelling, Jeff, get to work on getting these criminals out of our government. That's what we've been screaming about, right? Because that helps provide cover. It helps provide the necessary people cover for what's really going on. The mainstream media has never told you the truth. They haven't been lying to you for decades. They've outed themselves. So what do we have to rely on for news? Why are we upset? We're still upset because of the stories they're producing. We need to look deeper and find better sources. And when you see those little tiny nuggets that we've been finding in stories and in streams that they're trying to bury at the bottom, we've figured out what's going on. And that's why we think we're right. Jeff Sessions is about to come out on full attack. And it's going to be pretty for us, but it's not going to be pretty in the overall spectrum for the country, because we still have to get back to a place where we trust the FBI and the DOJ before we can pursue anybody in the DNC, anybody in Congress, anybody in any other branch of the government. You have to. So this is why you have to start here.
There was an earlier comment, James. Someone said, what I think we can all agree on, whether you like Jeff Sessions or not, is nobody wants to get on the bad side of Judge Janine. And I tend to agree with that. Although I will say she is a smolderingly gorgeous woman, so there may be a little bit of bad side that I wouldn't mind getting on the right side of, so to speak. There was another comment in the chat. Then there is Brennan screaming like a goat. That's what we're going to go to next. I just wanted to throw up this little clip for you guys to show you what's going on the other side. I'll only let it run for about a minute or so. There was a lot of talk on the left stream media, the liberal mainstream media, James and Tom, about how the quote unquote conservative conspiracy theory media is going crazy with all of their theories about there's a coup and there's informants and there was meddling in the Pfizer court and the dossier was fake, all of which turned out to be true, mind you. But for all that talk that people on the other side are a little bit crazy, I want to show you what CNN's been up to with their own, Hannity-esque map of deception coming from the Donald Trump team. Check this out.
I've lost your audio to that clip.
For trolling Americans on social media.
Let me
Trove of
yeah, let's reload.
There you go.
A very big jigsaw with a trove of characters. The Russians, 13 indicted for trolling Americans on social media.
So this is the top of their tree, right? The top of their tree are 13 Russians who may or may not have worked for a catering company, James, who may have sent out tweets both in favor of Donald Trump and against him, tweets presented at a rough estimate, and this could be rough, I could be wrong, I could be out by a couple of digits, at my best calculation, 1/1,000,000th of 1% of 1% of all election campaign tweets. That's the top of this conspiracy. Oh, the 13 Russians. Don't forget about the 13 Russians who were trolling Americans. This is the top of the tree. I mean, Vladimir Putin would be doing cartwheels, wouldn't he? Like, how did we get away with this?
Oh, my God. This can't be real.
Political trickster Roger Stone, longtime friend of the president.
See, that poor old Roger, they put him at the bottom of the tree, right next to Donald Trump. The 13 trolls on Twitter have more of an influence over the American election than Roger Stone did. He's going to have to write a new book. Like, I wasn't as shit hot as I thought I was.
Who denies coordinating with WikiLeaks. WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange, who distributed the Democratic National Committee's emails hacked by the Russians. Campaign aide Carter Page, his frequent trips to Moscow raising eyebrows. And Trump lawyer Michael Cohen, who pushed a never-built Trump Tower Moscow during the election and who was recently raided by the FBI.
Now, you see what they've done here. Now, they've done half of the job. See, this has always been the problem for me for people prosecuting the Russian collusion story. Pardon me. And I'll take evidence when it's presented and I'll give it fair cop. You know, I'll be very objective with it. But for me, it's not good enough to have a galaxy of events and circumstances without a story that ties them all together, because it's like looking through the world through a piece of Swiss cheese. You see a fact over here, a fact over here, a fact over here, a fact over here. But even though they've drawn all these little lines on this chalkboard, this particle board connecting all these people, they haven't actually explained how these people are connected and why they're connected somehow underneath the overseeing evil genius of 13 people who may or may not have worked for a catering company from Russia. So this is only telling half the story. Anybody with any legal experience will tell you that in order to prosecute a case, you can't just have facts. You actually have to have a tangible story that ties all of the facts together, because anybody can just throw out, oh, well, Carter Page went to Russia a few times and, Paul Manafort, he did something. He's been indicted, and Julian Assange is over here too. Yeah, how is it connected? Because generally speaking, if there is collusion, that requires people working together on some kind of level, not just all sitting underneath a Russian flag being represented by 13 people who, again, may not have worked for a catering company that represented, at best estimates, 1/1,000,000th of 1% of all tweets in the election.
Well, not only that, they didn't even exist. They didn't even exist. Like he literally has what do you call that? What do they call it? He's basically indicted a ham sandwich. Like, this guy, they didn't exist. They weren't a company. And then the people themselves, they're like, okay, you want to mess with us? They've already sent legal representation and said, okay, let's go. We're ready to go. You guys said we're criminals. So let's go ahead and have this trial. And all of a sudden it's Mueller is going, we need more time. What do you mean you need more time? You guys indicted him. You guys already said you had all of the evidence. You guys already said these are the people that did it. Let's go. Let's get it out the show on the road. And now you got the judge saying the same thing. The judge in that case is now saying, hey, let's go. You guys said you got this. Show us. And they don't want to show their hand very well. So they're not showing up too much.
What about, Tom? Would they be convincing enough people to make this an issue rolling into the 2018 midterms? Like, if you think about it again mimetically, would they be able to do enough of this association memeing to get, if they can ride this through to the midterms, can they do enough damage? Or do you think like they're kind of pushing shit uphill?
That's actually exactly what I was actually going to bring that up too, because a lot of things, like even with the Sessions thing we're talking about before, with this topic, exactly how they're playing this, there's so many ways you can play this game. It's not just the information, but it's about the timeline, how much you can drag it on. And I've ranted on and on and on, so I'm not going to get too much into it, about the echo chamber effect and the fact that there's really no parallel set of facts in the country that the nation's unified on. And this is actually really important because it's very hard to measure on with the universal metric exactly how it's going to play out, because the people who want to believe that this is all a big conspiracy on the left don't hear our side most of the time, and we aren't exposed. Most of the people in our echo chamber aren't exposed to their media either. So as far as it having a huge swing, I don't think it's going to affect anyone on our echo chamber, but it could foment and get people really foaming at the mouth, depending on how they release the information, how they spin the information, and the timeline of release. Because just like WikiLeaks, just like, on our side, there was WikiLeaks, there's James O'Keefe, how they use the trickle method of information. Now, they could milk this case, they can milk this investigation, unless it's shut down. They can milk it for months and months and months and drop tidbits here and redact things here, then unredact them here. And all they need to do to control their side of the echo chamber is just drip this out and continue painting the picture like they've been doing since before Donald Trump was elected. Almost 2 years now, we've been hearing the same narrative, and it's still working very effectively for them on their side. And it's not really translating over to our side as much, but I think it's going to, is this like issue alone and how they do this, is this going to swing it for them? I don't think so. I don't think it's really strong. Because in order to win this election, they're going to have to get the middle grounders. They're going to have to reach over and steal back center Democrats who voted for Donald Trump in this election. I don't think this is going to be the nail in the coffin. I don't think it's going to swing it far enough. I think there's too many people that distrust this whole situation, even in the center, and it's not going to be the one issue that's going to decide people's mind.
I'm glad you brought up it's not the one issue. Before we get, because your topic that you've brought to us tonight and brought to the audience really ties into this as well. Before we get to that, though, I just wanted to lay another layer on top, James, if you'll allow me to indulge. I've got a couple of very short clips and articles here for your consideration, just to layer this on top. This was Joe DeGeneva on Tucker Carlson Thursday night last week.
Like prisoners putting checks on a concrete wall, we like to mark the passage of time on this show. And as of today, Robert Mueller's investigation into Russia has been running for an entire year. What have we learned? Joe DeGeneva has been taking close notes from day one. He's a former U.S. attorney, of course, one of our favorite guests. He joins us tonight with a recap. Joe, what do we know?
We know that Hillary Clinton was illegally exonerated. We knew that a year ago. We know that there was a substantial effort to frame the current president of the United States with crimes by infiltrating his campaign and then his administration with spies that the FBI had set upon them. We have learned that the crimes were committed by the FBI, senior members of the Department of Justice, John Brennan, Mr. Clapper, Mr. Comey, and others associated with the Democratic Party, and that Donald Trump and his associates committed no crimes.
Okay. So he mentioned specifically there John Brennan. Let's flip to today, James and Tom, in response to a Donald Trump tweet where he said, and I quote, "I hereby demand and will do so officially tomorrow that the Department of Justice look into whether or not the FBI, DOJ infiltrated or surveilled the Trump campaign for political purposes. And if any such demands or requests were made by people within the Obama administration." John Brennan replied, thusly, "Senator McConnell and Speaker Ryan, if Mr. Trump continues along this disastrous path, you will bear major responsibility for the harm done to our democracy." Now, you can read into that a couple of ways, but I'm going to play a special little treat, one of our favorite periscopers with their own take on this. "You do a great disservice to our nation and the Republican Party if you..." Yeah, I'm sure John Brennan's really upset about the
Republican Party.
I'm only trying to help you guys out. Come on, bros. If you continue to enable Mr. Trump's self-serving actions. This was another one that I found interesting. I didn't know Brennan was an ancient Roman philosophy fan like myself. He wrote, and I quote, "Any man can make mistakes, but only an idiot persists in his error," by Cicero. That reminded me of another Cicero quote I'm very happy to bring up for you, called "The Traitor." It's quote, "A nation can survive its fools and even the ambitious, but it cannot survive treason from within. An enemy at the gates is less formidable, for he is known and carries his banner openly, but the traitor moves amongst those within the gate freely, his sly whispers rustling through all the alleys, heard in the very halls of government itself. For the traitor appears not a traitor. He speaks in accents familiar to his victims. He wears their face and their arguments. He appeals to the baseness that lies deep in the hearts of all men. He rots the soul of a nation. He works secretly and unknown into the night to undermine the pillars of the city. He infects the body politic so that it can no longer resist. A murderer is less to fear." Just to top that off on the John Brennan discussion, here is one of our favourites, Doc G. I don't think there's too much swearing, but just in case there is, be prepared for it. Just a couple of minutes of Doc explaining.
PG-13, everybody. PG-13.
PG-13, it's a family show. Well, if your family happens to be heroin addicts and they're up at 2 a.m, maybe. I don't know. I don't want to judge. So here's a couple of minutes of Doc explaining what he sees these particular tweets from Brennan, and then we'll go straight back to the actual host of the show, James R.
I told you just an hour ago. John Brennan is freaking out. You guys already see the tweet. He's begging. Remember, he's speaking in code. He'll speak in code. So what he's doing is he's begging for. Oh, he's shaking in his boots. He's shaking like a son of a bitch. You got the OIG report coming out now. President Trump said he's going to demand a special investigation. Okay. He is going to get to the point where once he starts getting these people out, boom, 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 he will end the Mueller investigation because he will end up busting their ass. He will end up doing that. Schiff is shaking in his boots too. They all are. Now, they're going to try to redact the living hell out of it. Then they're going to talk about how Trump's going to undermine national security, blah, 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 blah. And then all of a sudden they're going to suicide watch. Yeah, suicide watch. There's going to be a bunch of people suicided with bullets in the back of their head. Yeah. Warner. Oh, my God. Name them. You name it. I can – if I am good at this game – my first person I said was, you heard me on Boogie's scope. I said the first person when I entered Boogie's personal scope, I said the first person that they're going to go after is John Brennan. He's like, Brennan? I said, yep, that will be the very first person. Okay. He will be the very, very, very first person. Okay. Well, she thinks she's an untouchable right now because she thinks in order to bring her down, you have to bring down Obama. Okay. And she knows.
There you go. A little bit of Giuliani with the backdrop of what we've already discussed. Joe Geneva saying Brennan better get himself a good lawyer. John Brennan's remarkable quoting of Cicero, which I find gloriously fantastic given what we know about Cicero. He wouldn't have been a fan of Brennan, by the way. Giuliani saying that, you know what, maybe we will have an interview with Robert Mueller now that you mention it, and we could wrap up the whole process by September as well. So for me, I just found that all very interesting. Just ties up together nicely, wouldn't you say?
I absolutely agree with you. I think that you guys are spot on. I think that one of the things that, for me, one of the things that glares out at me when John Brennan tweets is that he tweeted specifically threatening Ryan and McConnell. Now, think about what John Brennan's role was. So what he's saying is that I have goods that will expose you, and you'll go down too if you don't help us now, because you were part of the deal. Now, all of us out here, we already know this. We've already put together that the establishment is Republican and Democrats working together. But the middle Americans that are honestly behind us in education on these facts, they haven't put it together, and they still won't put together the threat. They'll wait for the execution of the plan before. I mean, like, these are the people that kind of need, like a frying pan upside the head for them to figure it out. That it's the establishment. It's the right and the left. And all Brennan has done is exposed what we already knew, is that Donald Trump has the goods. He knows. Why do you think Paul Ryan is really retiring? Okay, he's retiring because Donald Trump said, you're either going to play ball or you're going down. That's it. That's the end of the discussion. And I want you to look at very closely. Remember when they were voting for Speaker of the House last time? Not this time, last time. The last time Kevin McCarthy was the golden boy. That's who everybody wanted. Who screwed that up? Freedom Caucus. Freedom Caucus is the ones that made sure that didn't happen. What happened in the compromise? The compromise was we got Paul Ryan. So everybody felt that they could work with him. They let it go. Paul Ryan becomes Speaker of the House. Now, fast forward to today. What's going on now? Jim Jordan. That's what's going on. And now we have a president that's going to support this. Who do we want as the Speaker of the House? Jim Jordan. What does that tell you? Freedom Caucus has been fighting the deep state way back since 2015. Freedom Caucus are the people that are on our side. Freedom Caucus is working with Donald Trump. And I've said this before. Look at what Rand Paul does. Look at who these guys are connected to. Look at who's speaking with them and for them. You look at even the people like Ted Cruz that have been playing ball. These people are done playing with people like Brennan. So Brennan's threat merely outs the fact that going forward with what Donald Trump tweeted today, and where he wants tomorrow, you're going to see Jeff Sessions is going to have to jump. That's what the game is. The game is now full on, and now it's going to go front page. And this is when I said before, when you have a 60% of presidential approval rate, you pretty much can do anything. And what do we have? We have a president with about a 60% real number approval rating. He's going out to the people now, and now all of these facts are going to come out. And what John Brennan and the left fails to remember is who has ultimate classification authority. The President of the United States, which means all these games with these redacted documents that they want to play. If there's something important that needs to get exposed to the public, Donald Trump has the ability to declassify anything at any moment, and he can literally declassify it all. So they're up against trying to play against a guy that's A, a master strategist, B, has all the power of the government behind him, and C, is now showing you we're not taking any prisoners. We're going full out right here.
Tom Shadley, do you subscribe to the idea that it's a credible threat from Donald Trump that he can release whatever he wants whenever he wants? Or do you think that it would do more harm politically? And again, you know, playing the press game, the meme game, is that, do you think maybe that's why he hasn't pulled the trigger already? Because, I mean, Donald Trump, the campaigner, I would have thought, you know, he'd be up for this a long time ago and would have pulled the trigger numerous times, especially with the releasing. I mean, you know, say the JFK files, for example. I thought that was a threat to, the deep state or his opponents in the system of government itself to say, hey, I don't have any problem releasing classified stuff. Like, look at this. You know that JFK thing that you've been trying to hide for the last 40 fucking years? Watch this. Bang. Out. There it goes. So, you know, who's next? Who wants to try me on that? Same thing with the threats to North Korea. You know, I don't mind fire and furies coming your way. And then the bombing in Syria as well, just to top that off. So do you think I really like the job that Jim Jordan and Devin Nunes are doing. I think they're bulldogs in there, really. And, you know, they've been hauled in front of ethics committee in the case of Devin Nunes, you know, basically eviscerated by the mainstream press. But generally speaking, do you think Donald Trump has that card to play, or would the political fallout just be too much to recover from?
Well, I think it's interesting. It's really a double-edged sword, but here's the thing. Donald Trump as an entity, as a force, really kind of has him by the short hairs either way, because he has the power to declassify things, release them, whatever. And he has, like you said, I would agree with your assessment that, say, you know, the JFK case, for instance, that was an open show of force in my to some members of our intelligence community that says, you know, at the end of the day, I really have this thing. So, you know, let's see what we can do. And I think even though he's, you know, boisterous and it seems like he's kind of, a wild card, so I think he's really more methodical than people give him credit for. And I don't think he would release things that would jeopardize kind of hopefully any widespread political, hopefully release nothing that would cause widespread, civil unrest or something like that. How he's a counterpuncher, and I think he has them terrified, because if they put him in the corner, if they make him feel like he has no other
Is that me?
here, and with the short attention span of the American public, all these factors playing a key. We've seen what the power of one document, declassified or leaked, has done to the political cycle. It's made it crazier, but it's also shifted mindsets very fast. And with the dissemination methods on social media and how fast it spreads and how things go viral, even against the censorship and the Twitter, the throttling of channels and all this stuff, it's a problem. Once you open Pandora's box, put back in the box again, and they know this. And I think Donald Trump has a whole slew of tricks up his sleeve that if he was forced to, if they really were forcing his hand and putting him, that he would hit that button. And you want to talk about sway for a midterms, even if he didn't run for re-election, let's say, I think he will, but even if he didn't, which might even make him more dangerous, if he doesn't have to run for re-election, which is just another option. If he doesn't have to run for re-election for whatever reason, that makes him all more dangerous to people who don't want him to speak the truth, because what does he have to lose? He's going to not run again, so he doesn't have to lose anything. He can hit that button. And any number of these documents, we saw when the text got released, we saw when the WikiLeaks got released, that, the public sway was almost instantaneous. And, the media spin as it was happening, that set a lot of people's brains. That if you were on the fence, that got a lot of people really willing to vote, willing to get out there, share information, get involved, get active. I honestly, I definitely believe Trump is capable. He has the stick here. I think he knows it. I think most of the intelligence people know it, that he's carrying the stick. He's not afraid to use it. And I think that's one of the reasons why in the media, they've been hitting him. But when it comes, behind the closed doors, they've been afraid to hit him or try to hit him because,
I think, in my opinion, that's why John Brennan is directly attacking McConnell and Ryan, is that he wants their support. He needs help. He's literally saying, I'll do anything to get you to freaking help us fight against Donald Trump, including threatening to destroy you in public. And so the guy, you don't do that unless you're desperate. You don't throw out your trump card, so to speak, unless you need to play it. And so I think they're flailing right now, and they're proving it to you. And that's why you see Donald Trump has just said, word coming, game on, starting tomorrow.
Yeah, it was interesting with this tweet, because Donald Trump tweets a whole assortment of things, which I absolutely love. It's one of my favorite parts about this presidency has been his Twitter game, because it's on point. It's entertaining, if nothing else. But when he said a hard date, that was interesting. That piqued my interest immediately. My ears perked up when he said, hey, tomorrow, I do declare tomorrow, it's going down. That's interesting. That's not a characteristic that's normally, he loves rhetoric.
That's constitutional, right? You understand that that's actually the way law reads, is that the president, through declaration, is what he does. So that's in the Constitution, that verbiage. So he literally declared in a public forum as a public posting, and then he backs it up with the written declaration tomorrow. Literally following the Constitution and slamming everybody right then.
Yeah, and I don't know if I don't know how Donald Trump runs his social media team, like the inside baseball of that, and how much of his tweets are him, how much are him in a group, or how much input he has on them. But I can definitely tell, there's a difference between a Rocket Man tweet and a tweet that was formatted like the one that was put out talking about this. And it's poignant. It looks like it's been through a lawyer's hands already. The way it's written, the verbiage, it's on point. And there's, and that really makes me think that it's very interesting. I think history is going to show, and it's going to be mind-blowing when we tell our stories to our grandchildren and stuff, how influential something like a tweet could actually be in a congressional hearing. or, I mean, this will actually be entered into evidence. This will actually be taken into consideration when forming a national, a geopolitical narrative, legal battles, impeachment. Like, these things now are a factor. They're a variable in this election, this last election, every election coming up, and politics from here on until the social media platforms, unless they're gone, like unless they're killed, unless they don't exist anymore. Now, these are, like, we're going to see Facebook documents, we're going to see Twitter documents being entered as evidence in tribunal.
I think you bring in a great tie-in point here, which is exactly why you see the left and these congressional dummies that are all still fighting for net neutrality. We all get it. Net neutrality is how they're using this to shut down conservatives all over social media. But as soon as net neutrality goes away, June 11th, I believe, watch for all of these breaks that are on top of us, that either social media goes out of business or they quit censoring a whole lot of the conservatives. What do you think?
I think they've chosen their hill to die on. I don't think that the given their current pattern of behavior, and I've got articles that I'll definitely pull up on this, because it definitely ties in. But at this point, in my opinion, government and social media should be one the same. Just the amount of defense contracts that Google has, the DARPA contracts and other things that Twitter and Facebook are completely involved in 100%. I think to discount them as two separate entities at this point is a little naive, especially with how much funding they've received, how much sway. I mean, really, how much do you think Facebook's really going to end up to the CIA if the CIA were to give them directives for something? And we have to remember that. That's kind of that in our brain. And I think they've chosen their hill to die on. And I don't think that the censorship's going anywhere. I think they're going to double down, and they're going to keep doubling down until the platforms are either completely destroyed, or all that exists on the platforms are PC echo chambers, giving one side of the story. And it's going to be ever shrinking too, because as we know this game works, you take one word, and you take two words, and you take three words, and on a long enough timeline, I see the social media lifespan going to zero. I mean, of the current forms that it's in right now. I think they're going to.
I want you to get into some of that material you've brought with you, and especially since you raised the new terms of service, how this may tie in, and even going so far as to say that tweets may be used in as evidence in future times. But first, I just want to hit a couple of comments in the chat just to let the folks know that we aren't ignoring them. Georgia Peach says, "I would love to poke any CNN reporter in the eye just once." Giovanni Jelly says,
I just about political violence.
He says, such a sexy voice, obviously talking about Tom Chatelet there. And Kimmy said, I'm as furious with the media as I am with anyone else. They're responsible for the fear for a good portion on America. So, Tom, seeing that you brought up the new terms of service, that's going to hit this week. So I'm almost glad that we were forced to come over here on Stream Me, our home away from home, and just roll on here and see how we go. We will play like a Periscope replay for the folks that aren't on stream as yet, but in case you're watching the Periscope replay, get on Stream Me, because that's where we are right now, and we're having a chat, and there's people in the chat room, and we're rolling on new terms of service are just bouncing off our oiled shields as we run towards the enemy with our lances drawn. So what have you brought with you, Tom? What have you got for us?
Okay, so I'm going to apologize in advance, because I actually have quite a bit of material that I'm kind of rapid fire here. I'm going to give you the automatic machine gun fire. There's just so much information, there's so much data, and I just want to throw dots out there for people to connect on their own. I'm also going to try to present the information as objectively as possible. I have my bias, and I'm going to try to keep it out of this one. What I want people to think about normally I'm pretty jokey and jovial, but it's actually a really serious topic, and it's something that's I've been following it for almost a year now. And so I'm going to throw out the data points, and all I'm saying, I'm not pro or against any of this stuff, but one of the main problems that people tend to not realize is the lack of public debate. There's so many huge issues happening right now, whether it be constitutional issues, media issues, free speech issues, government overreach issues, transparency issues, whatever it is. And the lack of public debate is going to be what ends up putting the nail in our coffin, in my opinion, if we're not careful. So I'm going to point some information out, take it as you will, and form your own opinion, maybe do some research. But it's just things that most people don't realize that doesn't get a lot of media attention. And so I'll jump into that now. Let me pull it up here. So I'll start with, Boogie had mentioned the terms of service. Now I know Boogie's talked about this. I know a lot of Periscopers have talked about this behind the scenes, and exactly how the new terms of service by Twitter could affect content creators, especially in the political realm, or people who play video clips. Basically, for anybody, I'll just give you a real quick rundown. For anybody who doesn't know, the new terms of service are very stringent on copyright. They could video clips, audio, potentially news articles. I reached out to Periscope personally to specify exactly what's covered, what's not covered, because a lot of the language is very vague. I don't think that's unintentional. I'm trying to remain objective here, but it's very vague from a legalese standpoint. It's very vague, a lot of the stuff they use, and they use a lot of generalizations when they classify stuff. But I reached out to Periscope personally. I talked to someone from Periscope, and they were not very cooperative. They weren't very enlightening with their information. They just told me to read the terms of service again. So they didn't answer any of my questions. But what I think, and you guys can read this terms of service too. I know we've posted it. Maybe I could retweet it again. I'm just going to run over it. What's interesting, not just the Twitter terms of service, because companies do this all the time where they update their policies, they update their terms of service, but it's not just Twitter. Ooh, I just closed that. I just had one, but it's not just Twitter. It's also Facebook. Facebook is redoing their entire system. They've now been cracking down on hate speech, in their opinion, and that's what they say. Oops. Yeah, wrong one there. And hate speech on their opinion. I'm going to try to pull that up real quick because...
it was a new algorithm, wasn't it, to actually, this is the scary part, they're taking the human element out of it. So you're going to punch into the system what hate speech is, and it could be just flagging a particular word, right? So you could be using a particular word in a different context, and regardless of the sentence structure or anything like that, sarcasm, all these kinds of things, bang, you're off. You're out of there.
Yeah, it's like texting somebody, just like on Twitter, right? Things are lost in translation because humans are made to talk verbally. To communicate verbally. Inflection matters, context matters, how they actually say the words matter. It changes your complete sentence if you just read it on the paper, and that's what these guys are going to take. As hate speech is basically everything is open to interpretation. So you're really talking about, you might as well just be burning books. It's the same thing. Yeah. And so here's, of course, stupid ad pops up. Of course, I love the paywalls and stuff. I really love the paywalls and all these things that they pop up that make it really convenient for us. But I'm just going to tell, and this from Facebook especially, I've been on teams where we manage major people's social media account, and just inside baseball, we've seen massive throttling. One of the biggest things that gets us is selective enforcement. That's how they've been getting us before, where they have policies and procedures set in place that could affect both parties equally, but we see them overwhelmingly enforced against people with similar ideologies as us, and even people who are just more independent. I've also worked for more liberal people and people who just have more independent thought and tell you to go research for yourself. They don't like that. And if you take one hot button political topic, that's all it takes. You could have a whole social media, you could have 10 million followers and you have a social media about puppies. But if you take one point, if you bring up one point publicly that gets any kind of traction, any kind of virality that goes against the establishment main stream media narrative, you get flagged. They'll pull your ad roll. They'll throttle, and they're very open about it too. They'll pull you off of the Facebook store. There's so many things so many tools at their disposal that they use, and I've seen this firsthand while working on very large social media campaigns. And they're very blatant about it. It's not even naked. It's not even hidden. It's naked.
It's just most of the American people don't understand. It's not something they run into on a day-to-day basis, or that doesn't affect their job per se. And so it's not on the tip of their tongue, but it's affecting almost everybody. And one thing I wanted to, kind of where I wanted to take this a little bit, because the other news story that was in, and it all ties together. The other news story that was in the news was you had the Google employees who had quit because Google was potentially taking a Pentagon contract for their drones, the AI that powers their drones. And it was interesting to me what was focused on the media and how much outrage or how much outcry there seemed to be bipartisan, a little bit anyway, on the subject, because this is nothing new. Again, I've been following these issues for a while, and this is going to be a wider debate. Maybe I'll have to do my own show about it or something, because it is.
Let me interject real quick, Tom. Did you see that they also was a story out that Google was complicit in the Hillary Clinton email server scandal? So if you think about what you just were talking about with Google, and then you tie in the fact that they were complicit already in breaking the law with the government official, I think these two things are related, don't you?
Oh, 100%. And this is, I'm going to try to keep it as brief as possible, because I could talk for hours and hours on this. But it's going to get to the point, and this is what I really want to drive home to the American people. As someone who myself is pretty free market, pretty capitalist, and we always talk about, private organizations and the ability to restrict and censor their own platforms and limit the information, which I agree with 100%. One thing that I want to drive home, and that's why this AI story is a good bellwether, even though it's nothing new. At what point, when the private entity, whether it be Google, Facebook, Twitter, at what point do we call for oversight? Do we call for some form of regulation when those specific private entities are subsidized and defense contractors for the U.S. government? At what point does the taxpayer now have some say in what those companies are doing when they are literally working hand in fist openly with the U.S. government in programs, mind you, that almost have zero transparency or oversight, public oversight anyway? At what point do we get to say, hey, if you're going to start trading massive contracts with the U.S. government, with DARPA, at what point does the American taxpayer have a say in exactly what you're doing and how you're censoring your content? And I'm going to start real quick with, I have a whole bunch of articles here, but let me pull it up. I should have already had it, but, and this is not a new debate. We had, man, I'm just all over the place. So I'm going to go back to this article, and this was actually in 2012. So for people who think this is a new issue, it's not. And so it's very strange to me, and it's very interesting to see how the news stories are bolstered and which news stories catch the attention, stick in the mind of the American people on the left and right, and create a firestorm. In 2012, Google wins a $35 million U.S. government contract over Microsoft. It was actually a bloody battle between Microsoft and Google, including up to lawsuits. I mean, they were viciously fighting for this government contract with the Department of the U.S. Department of Interior, and this had to do with Google's cloud ability. So this is the Department of the Interior partnering with a contract in a huge in Google's huge cloud program, and this was a huge hot button issue then, a little bit anyway. If you were paying in this sphere, in the technology sphere, we saw it. A lot of the American people didn't. It wasn't something that was publicized over, everywhere. But I mean, this is nothing new, and so I just wanted to bring that up. This is in 2013. I think I posted this link on my Twitter if you guys want to go see this. But so this has been going on basically since Google's inception. Not only do they have multi-million and up to billion-dollar contracts, potentially more, in my opinion, with the U.S. government, but there's also no public transparency almost at all. And a huge lack of oversight. And when you have someone like, let's go, Deb Roy. I know I've talked about Deb Roy before. I wish this article had his picture, but he doesn't. This is his MIT bio. He works at the Laboratory for Social Machines at the MIT Media Lab. He helps design algorithms that now that Twitter is using, that Facebook is now adopting, that mainstream media is adopting to let's see, how do they aim it?
Social machines to make machines more like you. Yeah, so you can welcome them.
Roy is also the co-founder and chairman of Cortico, and I did a whole article on Cortico back in the 2016 election. It was just intense. But a not-for-profit media technology company that is developing media technologies and services with the aim of improving the health of discourse in the public sphere. I love this. I love this propaganda. It's fantastic. They really know how to put a cherry on top. But basically, Deb Roy even did a speech where he talked about the 2016 election was a huge wake-up call and that we need to correct the political sickness. That's a direct quote, by the way. What happened in 2016. Basically, they didn't like the outcome. They classified that as a political sickness. Even Vice did a piece on this. So a lot of this is coming from academia. And by the way, also, not only does Deb Roy work at the Laboratory for Social Machines at MIT Media Lab, he also works for Twitter. Go figure. But and again, this is all stuff that we have to start paying attention. This is all brand new. These are all brand new things. This is stuff that the American public has never had to deal with before. So there is going to be a growing pains here. There is going to be a curve here for our understanding on exactly how this affects the outcomes. Now, there's many studies that have been out. This is a Oxford study, actually, where they, in the UK, they were trying to measure the percentage that social media, say like Twitter and Facebook, was having on political elections. And I'm not talking about hacking. Bots could be a thing here, but basically just the amount of news information. Yeah, exactly. The amount of influence overall that social media, Twitter and Facebook was having on elections. And it's substantial. It may not be enough at the time of the study to win or lose an election, but it's getting there rapidly. And as we see these companies and these entities partnering and building, upping their machine learning capabilities, their AI capabilities. I mean, the scale we're looking at here, it used to be gradual, but it's going skyrocketing. That's why you're seeing all these companies, in my opinion, that's why you're seeing all these companies rolling out their new terms of service, their new hate speech laws, the hate speech policies, and you're seeing widespread censorship on Facebook and Twitter. It's all happening relatively at the same time.
Let me jump in here real quick, Tom. And there's a point here where people are missing the bigger point, I think, in that what you see from these companies like SpaceX, for example, Elon Musk, Tesla, these guys, right? Their business model of bringing in the robots all over the place, of bringing in the AI to run McDonald's, to run Burger King, all just got smashed with the election of Donald Trump. All of it. Their entire building, they've invested billions of dollars into AI. They've invested billions of dollars into robot technology, and it all just got smashed, because that's why they were trying to bring you to this point where, oh, you have to forget about all those manufacturing jobs. They're gone. Oh, you have to forget about doing mining, because they wanted to create an environment where it was feasible for them to sell you that robots were the better way to do it. Robots were going to be more efficient. Robots and AI were going to take the place of humans. And you didn't need to worry your pretty little head about work, because we'll go ahead and feed you, and we're going to let the AI take over. When Donald Trump got elected, it smashed the entire paradigm that they've been working for a decade. And so now all these companies like Elon Musk are out on a limb. They're over leveraged in AI technology. All of Silicon Valley is over leveraged in robotics because they are positioned to take over, and now the country is not positioned to purchase. So they've literally got an upside down scale here. And this all ties into what's going on with social media. What say you?
Yeah. And here's the thing too. And again, I really want the American public stop thinking of Google as a private corporation. Is it? Yes. But what's happening now is you have an amalgamation. You have it's hybridizing. And the private entities, especially in the tech sector, are literally becoming, in my opinion, not only defense contractors, but they're hand in hand. They're becoming a hybrid with the U.S. government. And you can call this, progress. You can call this inevitable, or, as technology grows, whatever, take your pick on it politically, or how you feel about that. That's something you're going to have to wrestle for yourself, but it is happening. It's not a question that it is. And And just for some anecdotal evidence, for instance, I'll bring this up. Does anybody know who Regina Dugan is? Now, I remember I covered the story back in the day when it happened, or I was definitely focused on it for quite a bit there. I was doing a lot of research in Google and DARPA, their connections, and exactly just how do we separate Google from the U.S. government or the U.S. intelligence agencies? And it's almost impossible at this point, in my opinion. But Regina Dugan was the DARPA director, and she left DARPA. There's some interesting circumstances for how she left DARPA, but she left DARPA for Google, and she became a high-ranking administrator in the Google machine. So you have someone leaving DARPA, and mind you, they already have defense contracts, they already have joint projects, all of which, by the way, we can't see. We get the PR, we get some of the white papers, but it's not something that's for public consumption, most of it. It usually gets classified under national security or something. But so it's interesting. So she left DARPA to become a high-ranking official at Google. And then after she was doing work there, they were working on Google Life Sciences and Google Earth and a whole bunch of things, which Google Earth itself has CIA contract. I mean, there's just so much. It's literally one and the same. It's very strange. But she ended up leaving Google for, guess who? Ex-DARPA head Regina Dugan leaves Google for Facebook.
Wow.
So this is a revolving door, and so that's why I really want people to objectively look at.
This looks like things. I'm sorry, but I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I think I had to point out that to me this looks like SES involvement. This looks like senior executive services moving through the top levels of corporations to make sure that they're doing what the government wants done.
I personally, I would think you're probably right. Can I say that's happening for sure? No, but in my opinion, I think that is, I mean, just purely for common sense. I mean, we're dealing with things that not only we know they have a measured impact nationally, but globally, even as a national security. Even if you were to say there's nothing bad happening here, there's nothing malevolent or benevolent, this is just standard operating procedure. If I was the U.S. government and I wanted to keep tabs on exactly how these tools and these companies and these concepts could be weaponized and used against us, this is standard operating procedure. You would want people to go into these companies and analyze and have influence in how they're formed and how they grow, so that you can keep tabs on potential threats and how these same technologies could be used against the U.S. So, I mean, I could really paint it either way. That's why I want people to kind of have to form their own opinion on this, but do some research, because again, I mean, these are not like, this is Wired, and the other one was also Wired. I mean, I'm not using fringe websites here. I'm using mainstream media websites that just doesn't get a lot of spin. And I think a lot of it has to do with maybe American interest. A lot of people at this point, at this time, weren't necessarily super interested in this. But now that we're seeing Twitter and Facebook roll out widespread, and YouTube roll out widespread, potentially censorship issues and First Amendment, Fourth Amendment issues, like now it's on people's tongues, but there's so much research that one could do to see the trail of breadcrumbs that's kind of led us to where we are. And it's happened incrementally, but I think it's also speeding up. So it's happening incrementally. You had it was
they're fighting for their lives.
Right. And now you're seeing it ramp up. So now where it was a drip, 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 now it's just full bore. You're seeing the amount of this explode in your face, and that could be technology, machine, AI growth. It could be determined by a number of factors, but it is happening. The evidence is 100% there. And so I want people not only to stop thinking about social media entities as private corporations, but as defense contractors or hybrid organizations of the U.S. government, because it is hand in hand. ISP providers, we have the talk, like we said earlier, of net neutrality. I mean, these are all things that are happening very quickly. There is almost zero public debate. So what? So this story will trend on Twitter for a week, and then what will happen? Nothing. Right. Then the prince is going to get married, and then the media cycle, and this is going to hit the website, and then people are going to move on. Well, and unfortunately, we are in the media cycle. But so people just have to think. So not only is Google, they've got the DeepMind program that was funded by Obama, where they're mapping the human brain I mean, there's so many things that they're doing. Then you have Google working in defense. This is nothing new, by the way. Defense contractors were controlling the AI of drones, and then you have them in the medical sector exploring artificial doctors, and then you have them in all the the entire social media sphere and all of the cloud technology, in basically every aspect of what will be enormous determining factors for the overall lifestyle and standard of living for basically every human on the planet in the next 5 to 10 years. And I really want take a cold, hard look at just how many tentacles, so to speak, some of these private organizations have running parallel in completely classified U.S. operations,
Yeah. Tom, thanks for bringing all this to our attention. We're going to keep talking about this, but I want to get Boogie in here because basically you've taken over the show for about the last 30 minutes, and some of the people want to hear what the actual co-hosts of the show have to say on the subject. And so in order for that to happen, we got to put you in the box for just a minute and bring Boogie back on screen here. Boogie, after listening to all of what Tom has brought out, after listening to the disclosures on the terms of service and how these things are all tying back in with our government and our elections and just in the general overall living, what do you got to say? What do you want to say about what's going on, or maybe more questions even for Tom? Because Tom brings it. This is a subject that I'm glad we brought Tom on for, because he has definitely helped to educate all of us, including myself.
Yeah, Tom's really down with this stuff on a much greater level than I can even be. The thing that gets me about this is I'm always thinking, further down the line. And, if you're attuned to these moves in the tech world, then you're also attuned to the normalization of things like microchipping, the move away from cashless society. That's another one. So where everything's going to be digital, everything's going to be online. Now, if you tie in the fact that, there will be no more economic freedom, because cash is essentially economic freedom. It's untraceable. It's untrackable. You pay for cash at a store. They don't, there is no digital footprint being shot around the ether with your name attached to it. When you have things like the 5G network rolling out in conjunction with almost like in China now for a few years, they've had the social media ranking system, whereby if you're a good comrade, you will receive bonus points on your social media account. And, employers even here are already using social media to decide whether or not you're a desirable employee. So it can greatly affect your career prospects, what you post on social media. All of these things to me just line up to, like you were saying, whether it's intentional or whether it's accidental, I think is almost immaterial, if that makes sense, because all of these rivers are converging into a single sea. And that sea will have us completely surrounded and engulfed and covered over with all kinds of, it's almost like full spectrum dominance over who you are as a person. And another interesting thing is a video that Tom shared with me the other day that I played on my Thursday night show, James, was when all of our personal data becomes online and when everything about us, even to the smallest minute detail, can be harvested by third parties for whatever reason they want. And that third party can be companies or government. And again, tie in, no money, digital microchip implants, 5G, mobile phone network. I mean, Google is in your home now listening to you. When you tie that all in with the social media as well, who actually owns you? Because there'll be two versions of you. There will be the living, breathing, biological creature that walks the earth, right? That climbs trees, that cracks coconuts, that swims in the beach, that digs ditches, that plants vegetables. But there will be another version of you that exists completely and solely online. And with each of these adaptations, whether it be more integration with the social media world, more integration with the digital world, more of your personal records going online, you're essentially having less of you as the biological creature and more of you as the digital manifestation of yourself. And when that information is out there being used by companies, do you actually have a legal right to it? Because arguably you don't already. You don't. And
That's
then,
true.
in a sense, who owns you? Do you become the property? Does your digital information, i.e. your digital self, the digital representation of yourself, you then become the property, perhaps, of the United States government?
You just bring up a very scary point, because the new terms of service on Periscope says they own our content as produced and can do anything they want with it. So that's an excellent point. Just this conversation we're having right now, and we're putting on a show, they own our show if we put it on Periscope after the new terms of service come on. That's incredible. They're allowed to edit it. They're allowed to sell it. They literally are telling you, if you use our platform, we own your content. So you bring up a very sketchy point.
And is it just another case of just moving the trolley further down the track? You know, just getting you used to it. The idea, hey, you know what? Hey, relax. It's only the crappy periscopes. I mean, most people only do periscopes while they're walking around taking videos of cats playing in a field, or, you know, of the beach rolling it. Hey, it's not that important. It's not that big a deal. Maybe it is, and we just can't see it yet. Why now? And that's too. Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Periscope, they're all doing it within 24 hours of each other, all coming out new terms of service. And what happened last week? What was the big conversation last week in the news? Who was trying to drum up a big news story last week, James? Net neutrality back on the cards, right? Like clockwork. Like clockwork.
Exactly. They want you pissed off so that you'll vote for your own slavery. That's the biggest trick that the left has done over and over and over again, is sell you the meme of freedom whilst enslaving you with their actual policies. All of them. They've all been like, oh, don't worry, we'll feed you. What does that make you? It makes you a slave to their dinner. Makes you a slave to how they provide those funds or those services. I mean, this is what all welfare has done, is basically dehumanize people. It's made us no longer self-reliant. It's made us come eat at their trough. It's made us go knock at their door to get the things that we want. It all translates to power and control. And that's what they've been doing to us over and over and over again. And it's frankly sickening to me that people will vote for their own slavery rather than fight for their own freedom. And I think that goes all the way back to the Revolutionary War, where it was 30% of us that said, we've had enough. Go screw yourselves. We're fighting. And, you know, that means 60% of the people were somewhere other than, no, I don't want to fight. You know what I'm saying? You have to fight for your freedom every single day. And I think that's why right now we have to expose what's going on. And I really thank Tom for bringing that to the show this week. And a great guest as always. And I'm glad that he's going to stick around, because I know we're going to hammer these people a little bit more. But I wanted to just point out that we told you we were going overtime. We're already an hour and 20 in, and it feels like we just started. We still got so much more to talk about. So let me kick this into a different gear, because we're already running way out of time, is Dianne Feinstein. Speaking of exactly what we're talking about, fighting for your freedom, Dianne Feinstein, again, has tried to sell you the meme that somehow the DOJ is independent from the executive branch of government. If you don't understand the Constitution, she's going to make sense. If you understand the Constitution, you can see that she's lying her ass off because she's scared to death of what's coming. The Constitution clearly says that Congress can create bodies of government, but that the executive is the one that runs them. There is no such thing as an independent branch of government. Our Constitution is very clear. There is 3 branches of government. You have Congress, you have the executive, you have the Supreme Court. Tell me anywhere in the Constitution where there is any way for any government body to exist outside of those 3 branches. There is clearly not. And so this is another lie that they are trying to force down your throat with Dianne Feinstein as somehow they're independent. They are not. The DOJ works directly for the President of the United States, and rightfully so. So I want to go down this path here. And
we're back again. We're back again, aren't we, James, to when James Comey was fired. And I had to explain this is not intended as an insult. I was actually having arguments with Americans as a non-American saying, no, the director of the FBI, it literally says, serves at the pleasure of the president. It is his call, because they're like, he can't sack that guy. This is an outrage. He's a dictator. I'm like, no, this is exactly what he is allowed to do and should do if he sees fit. Like that's why the commander in chief, the president, is such an exalted position, because of the responsibility that you have, right? That's why you elect people, and that's why you're supposed to really think about it, and that's why you're supposed to really know the system. When I see shit like this from Senator Dianne Feinstein, to me, it's just speaking to low information voters. Like that's exactly, they're targeting them. It's preying on low information people. She's not out there to educate. She's not trying to educate. That's the last thing she wants. She doesn't want people to know the truth. She's literally force feeding the exact opposite and relying on the general ignorance of probably well-meaning people who just don't know any better.
I couldn't agree with you more. I'd like to bring Tom back into the discussion here and see what Tom has to say about this, because I think that Dianne Feinstein's comments directly tie back into what's going on here with the terms of service, with the net neutrality. Like, this is all them trying to sell us down into slavery. What say you, Tom? Oh, Boogie, by the way, could you unmute Tom? I see that he's muted.
Yeah, I'm muting myself too. I was trying to make it easy on the Boogie as much as I could. So
okay.
But yeah, no, 100%. I think it's so hard. Like, I want to try to remain as not biased, because I really want to know the truth of what's happening in the world, especially on these issues. And it's very, very hard, even objectively, to look at this pattern of events, the sequence of events, the dots, and not to think there's some agenda. Because even purely, if I was Google, if I was Dianne Feinstein, if I was the U.S. government, this is literally, and maybe if I had a little bit of a lacking moral compass or strict competition, I don't know. This is the business plan I would follow. I mean, there's nothing mysterious about it. This is a very successful business plan to follow. It's a standard operating procedure for any major corporations. They're just rolling out. I mean, like literally, if I was a CEO of a company, of a Fortune 500 company, I would be using the same exact tactics, the same exact information, the same exact policies and tools at my disposal in order to enact my agenda. So when I see this, it's very hard for me to objectively say, and it's even probability alone wouldn't allow me to suggest it's all coincidence. Oh, it's definitely a coincidence that Facebook and Twitter are changing their terms of service within 24 hours of each other. It's definitely a coincidence that they're calling for net neutrality in the same week, and also, mind you, vastly misrepresenting what the net neutrality is to the American public. And again, we're talking about spheres in which the American public have no experience. It's happening so fast that even technology people can't keep up with how fast tech is moving. So how do you expect the average American, the average layman like me or someone else who doesn't have a college degree in programming to even comprehend 5% of what we're even talking about? And the way they throw it at you and the way they run the news cycles, and I mean, it's rapid fire and the fear that's used, and it comes from both parties, by the way, because I don't think either party really understand what we're dealing with here. But I mean, it's very hard to really say it's all coincidence. It's just natural progression, because there's clearly a winner here. There's clearly someone is winning. Corporations are winning. Entities are winning, and it's very hard not to see the agenda here. But the best way we're going to combat this, and the best way we're going to put Dianne Feinstein and these other demagogues in their place politically, culturally, is to inform ourselves. With this age of information, we need to really, Matt Drudge, you guys were talking about it earlier, and Matt Drudge, he said it was we're being put into social media and internet gulags. Mental gulags, and this is actually the most accurate depiction. that I've really seen her described anyway from a media entity. But we have to break the narratives ourselves. Even if we're being censored, the information's out there. We have to really, if we care, start informing ourselves and start forming our own narrative to fit our own worldview on an individual basis, because we're not going to get the information from the media on the right or the left that we really need to accurately understand all of the pieces being put into play, all of the moves being made. So it's on the American people, in my opinion. We have to grassroots it, just like we got the MAGA movement going. We got Donald Trump election. We have to do the exact same thing, but what we have to elect now is our own consciousness. We have to elect our own ability to learn and teach ourselves as our main driving force to the movement.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree with you more, Boogie. After listening to Tom there, he brings up some points that we've been talking about, I think, on this show and every show for the last year, is that, the government is in cahoots with each other. It's the left and the right. They're all trying to sell us on our own slavery. What else do you think we can do in the future to besides Donald Trump? I mean, I think that Donald Trump's going to find the way forward here. I really do. But what say you about that?
Well, I think it's a good opportunity now to talk about the upcoming primaries, because it's once a week. That's where the battle is. And maybe we should go over a few of the primaries happening next week. I believe there's 4. There's a couple of angles that we can come at it. Let's go through them. What do you say? Yeah. First up, Arkansas, James. Let me just give you a couple of lines here. Incumbent Crawford County Clerk Teresa Armour Cobb will be challenged by fellow Republican Jolynn Tink Wester for her position in Tuesday's primary election. There is no Democratic candidate, so that's a pretty straightforward binary choice. James, any thoughts on Cobb versus Wester?
Which one has an R after their name?
They're both Republicans, so yeah. The incumbent Armour Cobb. I don't know. This would be local for Arkansas folks, so I don't know if Armour Cobb is particularly good or if Jolynn Wester is going to be any better. But there's no Democrat running in that one, so. Yeah, I don't want to get involved in something that's a local race like that I don't have enough information to voice an opinion on. Like that was kind of my point, is that, if she's doing a good job for you guys, I haven't heard. That's the good news. The good news is Boogie and I don't know her name, which means she's avoided mainstream attention of screwing the MAGA people. So that's good news. Yeah. So, generally, a good government is one that you don't hear about. Generally speaking, government doing its job is when you don't hear too much about it. How about this? Today's the last day. This is from a few days ago. Voting in Georgia. I don't know if Meg's still in the house. So who's running for governor? You've got people trying to take over from Governor Nathan Deal, who cannot run for a third term. There are 5 leading Republicans and 2 Democrats in the race. Brian Kemp has adopted a Georgia First mantra. There's also former state Senator Hunter Hill trying to carve out. There are 2 other GOP candidates trying to gain late traction, and Senator Michael Williams is trying to outflank his opponents with calls for tougher restrictions on abortion and ending tax breaks for special interest. Now, what's interesting here? Sure, go for it.
Well, this race, I actually do have an opinion. And this race, actually, we do have a candidate that's been vetted by our friends at Your Voice America. And apparently, Hunter Hill is the guy that we should all be looking at. So when you talk about that, this is a guy that's been researched by a team of about, I want to say 30 people that are digging into this. So although I personally don't have a lot to actually comment on him, I do have the friends that we all trust, such as, people like Ann Vandersteel, people like Meg, who you just talked about, Karen, her sister. You got Janet J. Wink. These people have been vetting these candidates behind the scenes. There's more people too. I apologize. I'm not just trying to highlight these people. They just, for brevity's sake, there's literally like 30 people digging in, and they've given the green light and the thumbs up to Hunter Hill.
Okay, good to know. Hunter Hill in Georgia. So let's move to Texas now. And this is where it starts to get interesting for me, because this is something I wanted to talk to you about, and we can bring Tom in on this as well. it's becoming clear Democrat strategy here, either by, again, intention or by falling ass backwards into it and having no choice. 4 candidates compete in the primary runoff race to replace Representative Lamar Smith. Congressman Smith, who has represented District 21 for more than 3 decades, announced his retirement last fall. His departure inspired 18 Republican candidates to join the race. The 2 Republicans who are still in the race are Chip Roy and Matt McCall. I don't know if you know anything about these particular guys, James, or... Hey there? Hello. We got audio?
Mic check. 1, 2, 1.
My fault. My fault. Completely my fault. Right. Please don't blame Boogie. I saw earlier that you guys were blaming Boogie. It wasn't his fault. It was mine because I was trying not to interrupt him, and then I forgot when I started going to other screens to unmute myself. So again, it's it's just, what are you gonna do?
That's all right.
Yeah.
So those are the 2 Republicans, Chip Roy and Matt McCall.
Yeah, I've heard good things about Matt McCall. I don't know anything really about the race and wouldn't want to unduly influence that either way because I don't personally have the information. This is a good time to highlight to people from these areas within these races that are MAGA people. Send us direct messages on your candidates so that we can have the information and dig into it. Because to be honest with you, right now, there's 435 races that we have to try to keep up with at least 2 people per race. I mean, we're talking over 1,000 candidates that a very small group of us is trying to dig into. So if you have information, please send it along so that we can dig in a better way.
Yeah, you can't be everywhere at once. So everybody needs to chip in. See, this is where it gets interesting for me, James. I've been tracking the Democrat side of the primaries because by identifying the people that the Democrats are electing as their preferred candidates, you can almost get a picture of what their strategy is going to be heading into the bigger elections further down the line. So here we go. On the Democratic side, remember, this is Central Texas we're talking about here. So Austin is a part of it. Austin's a very liberal city in Texas.
Very liberal. Very liberal.
Got to keep that in mind. But how liberal, right? So it's a liberal city. It's like a liberal island in a red state, put it that way. On the Democratic side, the race is between Mary Wilson and Joseph Copser. Wilson is a minister and math teacher at Austin Community College. She was a surprise winner in the March primary with 31% of the vote. Doesn't surprise me. Even though they're surprised because it is Austin. She defeated 3 challengers, including 2 who were much better funded. Grassroots, right? The grassroots community college teacher. However, the person who came in second with 29% of the vote, which is very much in the running come the election for the primary, one of those was Copser, a West Point graduate, Army veteran and businessman. He took 29% of the vote. Now, doesn't that sound very undemocratic in a very, very liberal city? I mean, so let's flip over to Kentucky now. Now, look at this. Kentucky, now, remember Connor Lamb in Pennsylvania, right? Yep. Kentucky damn to vault themselves into deep red district. So they're literally telling you in the headline of the Hill, we're trying to get into the deep red districts, right? Yep. Here are the 2 contenders. Lexington Mayor Jim Gray spent 8 years in charge of the city and its first openly gay mayor. Okay, so very liberal ticker box stuff there, while also becoming Kentucky's first openly gay candidate for statewide office during an unsuccessful 2016 bid for the Senate. Now, his opponent in this Democratic primary, former military pilot Amy McGrath, meanwhile followed her childhood dream of flying fighter planes for the Marines, where she became the first woman to fly in an FA-18 on a combat mission despite internal resistance to women serving in combat. Right, so you can start to see a picture here. Now, if you cross-reference that with Democratic primaries in heavily blue states, you'll find it's the more socialist, the hard left, who are actually knocking over the moderates, right? Because if you're in a deep blue state, you've got Trump rage. You're angry that the moderate section of the Democratic Party, in your opinion, isn't doing enough to stop Donald Trump. So it's the more visceral, the more unhinged, the more detached candidates that are like just about so far left that it would make Mao blush. They're the ones that are getting the most running in the deep blue districts. However, on the flip side, you go to the candidates that are being up in the red areas, Connor Lamb, these two ex-military people here, businessmen, military, very moderate, enough to appeal to Republicans or just swing voters in, culturally Republican states. You start to get a picture of what the Democrats are doing. At the top, it almost looks chaotic, like the leadership is just talking impeachment all the time. They're right off the rails. They're attacking Donald Trump. But at the local level, where traditionally the Democrats have been very good and very good at getting registered, they're very good at getting names on those registers, aren't they? At the local level, they are taking it they're taking local issues and local candidates that fit the mold of their constituents, and they're putting them up, whether it be far left socialists in the deep blue states or, moderate Republican lights in the red districts. So I find that very...
Yeah, I think that we need to do a better job, people like us and others like us, and as well as any influence we can give to any of the media people that we know, is that we need to highlight the fact that inside the Democrat contract, basically, it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter what you say. It doesn't matter what you want to do. When you are allowed to run on the Democratic ticket, you tell your people, you basically sign away a legal document that says you're going to follow in what the leadership chooses to do. So in other words, you're literally signing up to be a soldier. You can lie to your people. You can tell them whatever you want. You can literally say that I will never sign X type of bill. And if the leadership of the Democrat Party puts up X type of bill, you have to vote for it. It's in your bylaws. Like, this is how they hijacked their own primaries, because they set it all up in the primaries. Tom, I know that you have some experience with these types of people. What say you on the actual Democrat ticket? Because I think Boogie's nailed it here. I think he's definitely shown how in the left-hand districts, they're going to try to stay left. In fact, maybe even turn further left. And then in the red districts where they want to be competitive, they're going to try to turn right just to get elected. But once they get to Washington, we all know what they're going to do. Just lie and pull the lever for them liberal policies. What say you?
I would say that's I would agree with most of that in my opinion. That's pretty darn accurate. And this is going to be, it's so interesting with the decentralization of our republic happening in the information field anyway. I actually think there's a few things that we can do as a movement that can help combat this and kind of throw our own curveball in the field here to help win these states over, help turn states red, and help fight these really far left ideologues. And a lot of people think that I am not a Republican by any stretch of the imagination. I'm not a Democrat either. I wouldn't have classified, until Donald Trump, I wouldn't have classified myself that way. Not that I was very politically active, but this is something that we have to remember. And going into these midterms coming up, going into the more poignant politics of things, I think there's a few safeguards that we can put in for the future, little seeds that we can lay, little Easter eggs that we can lay, that also help us vet potential candidates that we want to vote for. And one is, now that we have more candidates running from a wider demographic, and because the 6 degrees of separation principle is kind of deteriorating at a pretty much rapid pace with the advent of social media, now you see people like Brennan and these other candidates using forums like Twitter, using forums like Periscope, open sourcing their constituency. Donald Trump did a rebranding of the Republican Party, in my opinion. We didn't become Republicans. We supported Donald Trump on the Republican ticket because that's how we subverted the system. In my opinion, that's why I like Donald Trump. In my opinion, he represents us subverting the system. So what I would do is take that exact same principle and apply it with topics. We need to rebrand our talking points. So publicly, if I was advising Republican tickets, if I was reprising, I would tell them, yes, we have the Second Amendment. Yes, we have abortion or these other kind of foundation standpoints that most conservatives abide by. But with the emergence of so many things that we've already covered tonight, I want people to start looking in the future and the willingness for candidates on the grassroots to adopt points that are pushed by their constituency. If we start talking and asking the candidates not just what they think about abortion, not just what they think about gay marriage or any of the other topics, yes, those are important. But if we start asking them and forcing the topic, what do you think about automation? What do you think about censorship on the internet? What would you do as, when we start introducing other topics? Again, we're going for the middle vote. The one who is going to decide this midterm is not necessarily the conservative. It's the people in the center, and it's the people on the fence and the Democrats that realize something else is going on and switch their vote or keep their vote in the red. And so I think it would be smart for candidates to start choosing topics that are much more convoluted in a way. And that sounds like I'm playing on the ignorance of the Democrat or the opposition, but I'm really not. But at the same time, if I have three choices, I have the Democrat, the Republican, and maybe I have one on the Republican ticket, but publicly he's running on a AI platform, or he's talking a lot more about automation, or these
something where it's harder to nail the guy down as well. Exactly. That's the other thing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Yeah, if you real quick, let me interrupt you, Tom. Real quick is that I want to draw everybody's attention that no, that is not a porpoise. No, that is not a dog. And no, that is not a whoopee cushion. That is Tom Chatelet's chair. So if you do not follow Tom Chatelet, you would be unaware that his chair makes all kinds of strange noises at the worst possible time and goes right through his microphone to you, the listener. So no, he's not farting. Boogie is not sabotaging him. So let's kick it to Tom for some final thoughts. We are approaching rapidly on 2 hours into the show, and we still yet have to stop the hammering, which is the highlight of our show. So Tom, wrap it up for us in the next 2 minutes, and then we're going to kick it over to Boogie to close the show. What do you say?
I would say, just for everybody out there, now, as midterms come up, now is the time to kick it into high gear. Any kind of skill that you can offer to a campaign or insight you can offer to a campaign, your networking, whatever your branding, any kind of skill you can that you can lend to a campaign now, start doing the research and choose your people in your local area, nationally, that you want to support publicly. Start doing the research, start talking about the issues that most of them aren't focused on because they're not just hot button political issues. Try to become more convoluted, so to speak, in your political branding, because that's where we're going to be reaching those people who are on the fence. And I hear that in the background. And then really, really drive it home. We're going to need everything that we can get in this upcoming midterm elections, because they're throwing literally the most advanced weapons that have ever been devised by man for controlling information in politics. That's being thrown at us all at once in ways that we've never seen before, that we don't have the defenses for, because it's something we've never battled before, never openly anyway, knowingly. And so now that we have that transparency and that we know what they're doing, how they're censoring us, great. But then how are we going to combat that and start strategizing that? And really get out there. And also, even if you don't, and this is not something I would normally say because I don't normally vote on a partisan line, but start paying attention to, I think if you're a supporter of Trump and you really believe in what Trump is doing, or you believe that he is whom a lot of people in MAGA think he is, let's make it easy for him. Even if there are people in the Republican Party that we might not like, but that Donald Trump might openly support, or that are Republicans, let's try to get that in the system, because Donald Trump is fighting a wall that we've never seen before. And I have a feeling that he'll have much more sway, much more malleability if we can get some good R's in there. If we have a few that come in that we don't like necessarily politically, well, let's get them in and suck it up and get them in anyway, especially if Donald Trump publicly supports them and we don't know why. Let's get them in there because I have a feeling he knows exactly what he's doing, and let's just make it easy for him by doing our due diligence. And also get informed, guys. If you guys want to get in touch with me or want to know more about anything that I've covered, just DM me on Twitter. Get in touch with me. I'll try to inform you or give you some sources if you need. And maybe I'll focus more on what I'm tweeting on my Twitter and give you more information. But I mean, now's the time. James talks about networking. Now's the time. While we have the power, we might not have it for long. While we have it, let's maximize the efficiency and really drive it home and really make America great again. Not just now, but think about in 5 years, in 10 years, in 20 years, in 30 years.
Well said, Tom. Tom Shadowley, thanks for being here. Stick around. We're going to have Boogie back on screen now, and Boogie is going to take over for pretty much the rest of the show, and I'm just going to sit back, laugh, have a good time. The rest of you, I think that you're ready. What say you there, Boogie?
Ready to rock and roll. Let's do it. It's that time of the week. But first, just quickly, by the way, if you want to get in touch, Tom Shadley, there he is on Twitter. There's me, Boogie Bumper. There's James. And please, 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 if you can, follow at TAVshow and share it around. We'll do our best to make sure the sharing, pardon me, on this platform, we'll try and get something that's a bit more usable for people. People are saying, how can I share? How can I share? So that's definitely something we're hopeful of getting in the short term, but we'll just have to wait and see how we go for now, if the AI bots don't kill us all first.
Stop the hammering.
Well, speaking of strategy, James and Tom, I thought I'd go straight to some guy who obviously looks like he's got a lot of it boiled down in that head of his. Steve Schmidt, never heard of him? He's apparently a Republican strategist and the type that gets rolled out onto MSNBC, I assume, I predict to be a battering ram against President Donald Trump. So let's check it out. Stephen Schmidt on MSNBC. Let's go.
MSNBC contributor and Republican strategist Steve Schmidt.
Republican strategist.
Do you trust, Steve, that the president and his staff have thought through what they're doing as they are now juggling three incredibly difficult issues, North Korea, Iran, and Israel, as we saw today?
First of all, that's an incredibly tricky and loaded question there. Do you think that Donald Trump and the administration has thought through what they're doing whilst they're doing three incredibly complicated things? No, I'm sure they just threw darts at a wall, at a map on the wall. Said, yeah, hit North Korea, hit Iran, hit Israel. Nah, to hell with it. Just burn it all down. Just burn it all down. Let's
just winging it.
Just winging it.
Of course not, Chris. It's all about U.S. domestic politics. Everything we will see Donald Trump do from now until the midterms to try to stave off a disastrous midterm election defeat. I don't want to attack the guy too much, but when you hear people like this who are apparently Republican strategists, by the way, he's not working for the Republican Party. Have you noticed that? He's a Republican strategist who's literally working for MSNBC. He's not currently employed by any Republican that I can gather. And when you see people like this being presented as the doyens, the beacons of strategic knowledge in the Republican Party, it soon becomes very clear why the Republicans haven't been able to effect any kind of worthwhile change in government for such a long time, the likes of Stephen. Perhaps now that he's out, something might happen. But let's hear what he thinks about the election coming up. Stave off a disastrous midterm election defeat is try to intensify support in his base through policies of incitement. And so
Donald Trump's trying to intensify support in his base through policies of incitement, James.
What is he inciting? What is he inciting? I'm not sure. Maybe loyalty, maybe Americanism, maybe really good values. No, couldn't be that. No. I bet you it's going to be bigotry.
Bigotry and Nazism, James. Yeah, the only kind of incitement that counts when you're Stephen Schmidt.
When we saw the two theocratic nutjob preachers at the crossroads of civilization and religion be able to antagonize Judaism, Catholicism, Islam, and Mormonism.
Donald Trump's taking no prisoners. He's antagonizing Judaism,
Judaism, Catholicism, any ism. Let's just whack any old ism in there. Donald Trump, the evil Satan, as we know.
All on the same day because
All
of their
on the same
previous
day.
bigoted pronouncements,
Previous
their
bigoted
extreme
pronouncements.
ideology.
Extreme
This is not
ideology.
about making the Middle East more secure.
No.
It's not about making the United States more secure.
No.
It's not about making sure that we don't have yet another generation of
Unintended
American kids
side effects.
dying in Middle Eastern wars.
What's
It's
it
all
about?
about Donald Trump being able to score a point, ephemeral though it may be in the news cycle. And
To see the whole thing, North Korea, Iran, moving the embassy to Jerusalem, which of course was
All to score a
ratified.
point.
I think it was back when Donald Trump was probably playing stickball in New York when the government first decided to move the embassy to Jerusalem. No, it's all his fault, and he's just doing it to score a point, just one.
Just one, too,
point.
not just multiple points, just 1 point.
I know. 'Cause you see, I try to put myself in the mind of a politician, and I think, if I'm trying to incite rage and insult Jews, Muslims, and Catholics and Mormons, I think I would get more than 1 point for it. Like, I don't know if it's going to be worth my while. I don't know. How many synagogues do I have to burn to the ground? How many people do I have to go into concentration camps to score more than 1 bloody point, Stephen Schmidt?
and to position himself for the midterm elections. It's clear as day.
Clear as day. You know, he's not running in the midterms. You know that? He's positioning himself for the midterm elections. And no. I would think this guy probably doesn't know strategy too well. It's about positioning the other candidates, right? Donald Trump's them, not the other way around. But let's not get strategy get in the way of an expert on strategy.
That he has no sense of history.
No sense
He's
of
completely ignorant of the religions and the region. Do you think that he could tell you the origins of the Sunni Shia schism? I suspect not. He knows nothing about anything. He's bumbling around. And
you know what? Donald Trump's doing this to score points. Do you know how I know, James? He can't recite the Quran.
with this rash move, the Middle East.
Move.
And as I said, when he announced the move to the embassy, I said there will be
even the host is like, oh dear,
blood on his hands, not because he pulled the trigger, but because he destabilized the region with it not having.
Yes, he destabilized the Israel-Palestine conflict. Before this, James, they were handing flowers over the border. They were cooking each other treats for the
intermarrying.
Oh, yeah. It was all lovely. It was all wonderful. They were holding hands, singing Kumbaya until Donald Trump, the evil, bigoted, insightful point scorer, came. Decided to move the embassy 30 years after it was first agreed to.
Any clue about what he was doing, and that goes for Jared Kushner as well.
I want to just, you mentioned Robert Jeffress, who is one of the pastors who gave an invocation today. This is what Mitt Romney had to say about him. Robert Jeffress says, you can't be saved by being a Jew, and Mormonism is a heresy from the pit of hell. He said the same about Islam. Such a religious bigot should not be giving the prayer that opens the U.S. embassy in Jerusalem. John Hagee also giving an invocation today. So you think this really is a entirely domestic political management of the Trump base?
Of course it is. It is an appalling disgrace that these two were allowed to open in prayer under the flag of the United States, an official U.S. government event, given their mountains of bigotry, their anti-Catholicism, anti-Judaism,
anti-Catholicism, anti-Judaism. Just whatever you got, whatever religion you got, line them up. We'll be against it because this is all about incitement to score a point, remember?
Anti-Islam, anti-Mormonism. We don't talk about who these people are enough, so let's do it for a moment. Jerry Falwell, Franklin Graham, Mike Huckabee, all of them. They dress up as men of God, but they are not. They are in business. And they are in politics.
He is. He's burning down the church. This guy, isn't he? He's burning down the Republican church.
I was uninformed of Mike Huckabee's elevation to the clergy.
Yeah. No, he's a man. He's a man of the swastika embroidered cloth. Now you'll be pleased to know, James. He's
Got it.
Around exciting bigotry. Yeah.
And the type of politics that they advocate is an extreme and theocratically tinged politics.
An extreme theocratically tinged politics. And I love it too. The type of policies that they advocate. Can't name one. Don't have to. We're on MSNBC.
You see that they thirst for the nectar of political power. The gospel.
I think this guy missed his calling in life. He should have been a poet.
Dude, that was poetry.
Inciting hatred, where, to score a point, thirsting for the nectar of political power. Mike Huckabee. I guess he's putting Sarah Sanders out there as like a metaphysical virgin to be sacrificed whilst he thirsts for the nectar of political power. This man cloth that isn't really.
Is secondary. When you look at their explications of Donald Trump from all sorts of behavior that they previously condemned, it's for expedient, partisan, political purposes.
Yep.
One of the things that is certainly true about this movement, wherever you look around the world and you see the fusion of the state with religion, whether it is Putin and the Orthodox Church complicit in his power, or other places around the world.
No, just had to mention Putin. Nowhere else, especially not in, say, Israel or the Middle East, for example. There's, let's just say other places around the world, right? I wonder, I bet this guy's read the Quran. He knows the history. He knows. He's not out here trying to score points, not at all. This has nothing to do with scoring points or thirsting for the nectar of political power. It's just like, to hell with Donald Trump, to hell with Vladimir Putin, and everyone else is basically a victim.
The ideology advanced and represented by Heggie et al. Always veers towards the autocratic. It's always less free. It's always dominated by an extreme animus towards gays. There are people who
Donald Trump also hates gays.
Would much rather tell you how to live and what birth control.
Go for it, James.
Wait. Donald Trump is the first guy to ever put an openly gay ambassador to Germany in there, but his entire strategy is to be anti-gay. What?
Yes, you're misunderstanding, James. He only did that to incite his base to score a point to avoid a disastrous midterm election. You see, so that's how cunning he is. That's how clever he is. Because you see, he's got the theocratic demons stalking around him, such as Mike Huckabee, who are telling him to drink the nectar of political power, crack that coconut open and feast on the goo inside. And they said, no, put gay people and women in your administration. Pile up the base to vote for who you want them to vote for. Because that makes sense, right? Remember, Republican strategist.
Oh, my God.
Haven't been able to kick any goals in the last years. I don't. It's pretty clear now.
You're allowed to take, for example, if you're a young woman that would ever dare to say what is so obviously true about conduct by this president that is so obviously wrong. These are the modern day Pharisees in the temple. They are hypocrites. And one of the blessings of Roy Moore's candidacy is we know who they are. And no one in this country ever has to pretend again when they hold up a cloak and say, you're attacking my religion, to do anything but laugh out loud. They're politicians and extreme ones at that.
Republican strategist. Steve, James and Tom. Yep. Donald Trump is merely trying to incite hatred between Jews, Muslims, Catholics, and the Mormons. Mitt Romney is on the level when he said the two people that prayed under the American flag were evil religious bigots. Donald Trump is moving towards an autocratic regime, which includes suppressing gay people, regardless of how many gay people he elevates in his own administration. Women should be afraid because he's a complete hypocrite and engages with groupies when they hurl themselves at him. But let's not forget, it's all just to score 1 point, to rile up his base, to do the exact opposite, it seems, of what he actually wants them to do. So, Republican strategist extraordinaire, Stephen Schmidt, ladies and gentlemen. That was the hammering.
That was the hammering. Oh, my God. That guy is freaking insane. Like, that guy has literally lost his mind.
Got some talent, doesn't he?
Stop the hammering.
That guy is insane. Like, anyone who hires that guy, it better not claim to be a Republican. Like, literally,
No,
like, I think
that's why he's on MSNBC.
I don't know where he came from, folks. We are flat out of time. We are 2 hours and 3-4 minutes into this thing. We are flat, gotta go. We appreciate you coming. It's been great. It's been fun. We doubly, triply, quadruply appreciate Tom Shadowley. He brought some serious content to the game tonight. I hope you guys enjoyed yourself. I hope you learned a little bit. Look forward to following us. Follow me at Real Person Politics. Follow Boogie at Boogie Bumper. Follow Tom Shadowley at Tom Shadowley. And I think follow the show, right? At TAVshow. We're on Twitter. We're on stream.me. We are on Periscope. We'll probably have to replay this episode. Sorry for the problem tonight, but that's all the time we got. So for Boogie, for Tom, and for me, I say aloha. Thank you all for joining us. Everybody have a great night.